Hello, everybody, and welcome to KB's Unemployed Show. Happy April Fool's Day. But I'm here to tell you that today's show is not going to be an April Fool's joke. Wait. Hello, everybody, again, and welcome to KB's Unemployed Show. Happy April Fool's Day. But I'll tell you, some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is no joke. It is not an April Fool joke. It is going to be fun. We're going to talk about the Artemis moon launch. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and his manifesto. And I'm just going to run through a few things, and you can decide whether or not he predicted the future. All that and more when KB's Unemployed Show starts right now.
It's KB's Unemployed Sheet. He's unemployed and didn't know what to do, so he started a shit. Talks about stuff to kill time. He didn't know what to call it, so he called it KB's Unemployed Show.
Welcome to the April Fool's edition of KB's Unemployed Show. It is also, I'd like to extend a happy birthday wish to Rachel Maddow. That is one fine looking young man there. I'll tell you, really has done a lot for himself. So happy birthday to you as well. But as I said, it's April Fool's Day. And as I teased you with, I'm going to run through some things on the Unabomber's manifesto. Now, I'm going to say this over and over again throughout the course of the show. I do not condone or advocate anything that was done or undertaken by said Unabomber by any stretch of the imagination. The guy's psychotic. He is dangerous. He deserves to be locked up. I am not a Unabomber sympathizer at all. But when I watched Mindhunter, it got my curiosity level peaked, and I went and read the manifesto that he had sent to the Washington Post and the New York Times and the San Francisco Chronicle, and went, holy shit. Wow, this guy nailed it. But I'll let you decide on that, whether or not you think it is the truth. But I looked at some things and went, man, oh man, you know, for a nutbag, he actually predicted a lot of things. But that's what I think, not what you think. So April Fool's Day. How did April Fool's Day get started? I am not one for April Fool's jokes at all. Wacky radio DJ stuff by any stretch of the imagination. No one really knows how April Fool's Day got started. One theory is it goes back to ancient Rome, and there's like a festival of Hilaria, which was happened in late March, which was a festival of games and mockery. Some of them link it to the Pope's calendar. Pope Gregory the 7th, I believe. Gregory the 8th. I get 7 and 8 mixed up all the time. And that was a calendar reform, and it kind of moved New Year's Day from March to January 1st. If you think about that, the New Year's started in March, and it makes, you know what? It makes all the sense in the world that maybe we should go back to March 1st as the beginning of the year. And here's why. No. We'll take it to March 21st or 20th, whatever the 20th and 21st is, and that's the first day of spring. So why wouldn't you make the first day of the year the first day of spring, right? The new year is really starting then. Right now in January, we jam New Year's Day in there because it follows Christmas, and it has to do with this is probably why Pope Gregory the 8th did it. It has to do with the Catholic Church calendar and the birth of Jesus and the Epiphany and all these things, and they've timed it out. But it does make all the sense in the world if you were a pagan or Wiccan, that it should start on the first day of spring. That's when the earth reawakens in your area. And if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's when the Earth is going to sleep for a period of time, if you will. I might get on that. I think it makes an awful lot of sense to move New Year's Day to January 1st. We will revisit that at some point in the future. And people were celebrating in April in France, and they were marked as April Fools. And then pranksters would then walk around and slap paper fish on people's backs. And it's a tradition that is still alive today in France, and it's called Poisson d'Avril. Poisson d'Avril, whatever. I don't speak French, have no interest in speaking French. But that must be a celebration or pranks of April or something like that in the French language. But then by the 1700s, it spread to Britain and in Scotland. Then it became a 2-day event where they believe that's where they invented the kick me sign. So instead of paper fish on the back, they were slapping a kick me sign on somebody's back. And then in Greece, there is a belief that if you successfully fool someone, it will bring you good luck all year. So there is historical trend for April Fool's Day. Now, there have been some legendary hoaxes, and there's a couple here that are outstanding. And then I'm going to give you one at the end that, if it's true, it's going to be what color is the sky on your planet. If it is a hoax, and I'm undecided because they've done a great job of this. If it is a hoax, then it is one of the most elaborate hoaxes that I have ever seen. And insanely successful. And whoever pulled this one off is a genius. But we can start with one of them that happened in 1974 called the erupting volcano, where a prankster in Atlanta, or not in Atlanta, rather in Alaska, predicted that, or he called the erupting volcano, where he went up on a mountain, Mount Edgecombe, and near Sitka, Alaska, and started a fire, and then went and convinced all the people in the villages that lived there that the long dormant volcano was erupting. So that was obviously not the truth. The other one was in 1957, the BBC convinced people that the people in Finland were harvesting spaghetti from the trees. And then people actually started calling the BBC, asking how they could grow their own tree spaghetti. So people fell into that one as well. In 1988, and I could see this because this makes all the sense in the world why people would get nuts over this, but it's really, they're going crazy over it because of their own biases and their own prejudices. But it is kind of funny. This is called the pie recalculation hoax, where a man posted a satirical article claiming that Alabama's state legislature had passed a law redefining pi, 3.1416, whatever it is, as exactly 3.0 to align with biblical principles. And Alabama lost its shit. It was just a joke, but in the deep South, if you get anyone out there who is who wants to change anything because of biblical principles, people will go absolutely nuts. And in 1996, Taco Bell ran a full-page ad, claimed it had purchased the Liberty Bell, and I remember this one, purchased the Liberty Bell and renamed it the Taco Liberty Bell. And the National Park Service, people lost their shit too and went crazy on the National Park Service. I think what a great what a great April Fool's joke would be for Donald Trump to come out and say, I'm changing the name of the Liberty Bell to the Trump Bell, or the Trump Liberty Bell, or whatever. And watch people go absolutely crazy about that. But then there's this one. And I read this article, and I'm like, there is no freaking way that this is true. There is, so I did some backgrounding on it, and I still can't tell. I still cannot tell, but it started out on TikTok about 3 weeks ago. So if this is an elaborate April Fool's joke, then someone really has their shit together, that they started it 3 weeks ago and it's carrying through. But a food scientist went out on TikTok and said, watch out for this product. It's like 3 weeks ago. The video's gotten over 87,000 views, and it says, watch out for this product. Please get this product off the market. The nutrition label, it says, is AI generated. The entire label is incorrect, misspells names, missing legally required items. And that's why I'm saying this is probably an elaborate hoax. But they have some compliance issues. And I'm certainly not buying it. I'm certainly not buying it. But what the product is it's called Meaties. And Meaties is a ground beef flavored breakfast cereal. It says, beef up your breakfast, chocolate, peanut butter, maple, cinnamon, try them both, made with grass-fed American beef, 20 grams of protein. And as I look at this, I'm going, my God, this is hysterical. If someone is actually doing this, because the big trend now, everyone's talking about protein. It's like it changes. No carbs, no this, no that. Everyone's looking for a shortcut. No, now you want more fats. You want these fats. You want this. You want that. Now, everywhere you look, it's protein potato chips, protein this, protein that. The average person doesn't know how many grams they need, right? Well, I ate that bag of chips. There was 9 grams of protein. Yeah, but there was also 4,200 calories, you idiot. So Meaties, beef up your breakfast. And it says on the box, and there's chocolate peanut butter, $14 a box, maple cinnamon, or you can get a 6-pack for $70. Just natural ingredients, no fillers, no extras, just real food. 100% USDA beef. It doesn't say USDA, it says USA beef. Gluten-free, dairy-free, no artificial ingredients. Who says cereal can't be made from ground beef? Get the crunch, the slurp, and the sweet, sweet milk at the end of your bowl, but skip the crash completely. Never choose between cereal and your health again. It's got to be fake. It absolutely has to be fake. But I'm telling you, they've got people buying it. And it says, ditch the grains, build from the king of nutrient-dense foods, ground beef, dehydrated, naturally flavored, lightly sweetened with honey or maple syrup for that grape nuts crunch. The first guilt-free cereal in 150 years since Kellogg started the breakfast myth. So that's another reason that says, okay, what they're probably doing is they're probably trolling Kellogg's. I would not doubt it if Kellogg's was not behind this. But I went so far as to put a box of the Meaties in my cart to check out. And they've got it all the way through where you can use a PayPal. You can use all of these things. Get your credit card number. Of course, I did not put anything in there. But Meaties, coming to your breakfast table soon. If it is true, or if it is not, if it is a April Fool's hoax, good on them, good for them, because it's incredible. If it is not an April Fool's joke, all I can say is, what color is the sky on your planet? Freaking crazy. Meaties. The hell is that? Meaties. More ground beef, Mom? Beef is I don't know why beef has been overlooked as a breakfast food. Really, when you think about it, beef is not included in a lot of breakfast. It's all pork. All pork products. Somehow pork products have become the go-to for they become the go-to for breakfast foods. Meaties. Artemis 2. Artemis 2 is launching at 5:42 p.m. Central. Artemis 2 is taking 4 astronauts on a 10-day journey around the moon. It will be the first mission outside of the Earth's atmosphere since 1972. Just a flyby, not a landing. This is what, I was never really a conspiracy theorist, but I love conspiracy theories. But, I think we all took, the moon landing as fact. But now I'm kind of looking back at it going, okay, that's fine. Maybe we did land on the moon. But my issue is not whether it's so much we did land on the moon, if that was real, as much as if we did actually land on the moon, why is it taking us so long to get back? Why is this so difficult? Right? Can't someone just go out and get the 3-ring binder we used before and go, here it is? Had it put away in a closet somewhere. They updated a little bit. We're back on the moon in no time. But, no, it has not worked. So it makes me think that, wow, maybe that wasn't real necessarily, because maybe it was just something that they did, because Kennedy said we're going to go to the moon. Was it something that they needed America, to get the morale up? I don't know. I don't know what it is, but they're going up there. They're going to fly around. They're going to test life support system. Which saying, well, didn't you have that before? And after one day observing the far side of the moon, then they're going to slingshot back around and, come on back to Earth. The moon is rather interesting because we never see the dark side of the moon. Just the way that it rotates and everything, you never see that other side of the moon. So what's over there? I don't know but we never see it. So that could be where all the aliens are. But this Artemis 2, they said, well, okay, this is paving the way for Artemis 3, where we could land on the moon as early as 2028, which is going to be 60 years after we did it the first time. So why weren't we back there? Was it because we didn't know how the first time and now we finally figured it out? I don't know. But that's going up at 5:42. And I thought it was supposed to go up at like 11:30, or maybe that's just when the broadcast started. But you notice it's not that big of a deal. People really aren't, unless I'm out of touch, but it's certainly not a topic of conversation everywhere. When it happened, the moon landing, when it happened the first time, and the Challenger, and anything that had to do with outer space, that's when the teacher would roll the TV into the classroom, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be awesome. We're going to have a film strip day. We're going to be able to watch TV or something to that effect. We're not going to have class, but haven't really heard anything of that, where there's viewing parties or watching parties or anything, which then kind of makes me raise an eyebrow. Have we become that that cynical that it's like this is not a big deal? Does NASA not have a good enough press team? Is their PR team not as good as Bezos or Elon Musk? But I think Elon Musk has got a hand in this. I think SpaceX has something to do with this. But we'll sit back and we'll watch that. and see what happens there. Tiger Woods is coming out. He has come out and spoken about his last DWI. Two things. Number one, he said he's not getting a driver. And again, you look at that and go, what color is the sky in your planet? What do you mean you're not getting a driver? He's 50 years old. And he said, no, because for my own personal privacy, I'm not getting a driver. Well, okay, well, that raises a lot of red flags too. But if you hire a driver, you sign him to an NDA, right? They take you wherever you want to go. But of course, he was in that accident where he refused. He blew into the breathalyzer and there was no booze, but they found a couple of loose pills in his pocket, which happened to be hydrocodone. And he was rather glassy-eyed. When you take a look at him, it looked like he was really effed up. But he just had, some more reconstructive back surgery. He had a problem with pain medications before, after surgeries. He definitely broke his body down quite a bit. He was dating a Trump, Vanessa Trump. Is that her name? He is dating a Trump, which was Don. I'm going to say Don Jr.'s ex that he was dating. She was pissed at him. But he came out and he said, you know what? I'm stepping away from everything to focus on my health and my family. That's what they all do. They step away, to focus on their family and their health. He said, I know and understand the seriousness of the situation I'm in. I'm stepping away to seek treatment and focus on my health so I can prioritize my well-being, work toward lasting recovery, which there's pretty much an admittance of a relapse there. And then, of course, signs it off with I appreciate your understanding and support and ask for privacy for my family and for myself at this time. Okay, you've got it. That's no problem. I won't worry about you anymore. And finally, Pizza Hut just body slammed the U.S. They just freaking kicked our ass. And why people haven't done more of this in the United States, I do not know why, because it's a 2-foot putt. It's so obvious that this is what we should be doing. And that is stuffed crust. They have taken stuffed crust to a new level in Canada, and Pizza Hut has added a stuffed crust pizza stuffed with a hot dog. This is freaking genius. Put the hot dog into the crust, roll it up. It's 2 different meals in one. Now I'm starting to think about what can we do with different crusts. Now, I never worked at a Pizza Hut. I worked at a KFC, and there's only so much you could do with chicken, and KFC sucked. But I do know that I did stuff at McDonald's when I was working at McDonald's, where you would make stuff up and do it on the grill. And then there were people who did a whole bunch of extra things at Pizza Hut. Friends that I worked at, what we used to do is we'd get employee meals, but we'd call each other when we knew someone was working at another store because they get sick of their own food. So you'd call Pizza Hut and say, hey, we'll give you 8 pieces of chicken and blah, 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 blah in exchange for a large pizza. And you'd write yours down as an employee meal, then you go get theirs, right? So they were always making stuff. But messing with the crust, if I was there, let's think about this. What kind of, and maybe you can hit this in the comments below. What kind of stuffed crust would you make? Okay, so they put the hot dog in Canada, which is awesome. But what would be some of the other things? I could see like doing a mac and cheese. I mean, it'd just be a big carb fest, obviously. But you do a mac and cheese on the inside of that would be good. What if you did some sort of a garlic, maybe a garlic cream cheese, like a wonton or a Rangoon? So you could do a Rangoon stuffed pizza, and you put that, with garlic and that could be really awesome in the crust. That could complement the crust. And you could accentuate it with any of your toppings. You could put your sausage, you could put your pepperonis in there. A variety of meat products would be fantastic. But we got to get on that. Give me some suggestions below, and we'll see what we can't do. This will go on with my other great food inventions, the Covered Dish, which is my casserole store, much like a soup store. So that would be that, and with the quesadilla, with the quesadilla food truck, where it starts, you have your pizzadilla, but then you can do quesadillas with a bunch of different items and a bunch of different objects or ingredients. You could do your Big Mac quesadilla, or you could do a Reuben quesadilla, which, by the way, if you look at the YouTube channel, the recipe, I did do a video of the Reuben quesadilla. So, but we will get on that. So that is the news. Now we are going to get to right now something that I have much trepidation in talking about, but no, I don't. You know what? I don't, because I'm not wrong on this one. How about that? I was watching Mindhunter, and it is on Netflix, where they start talking about it's a kind of a docu-series about people in the CIA, FBI, what have you, who are profilers. And the first season, they were tracking the Unabomber, and I found it really interesting to see, the thought process behind how did they find him, how did they connect to him, and because Kaczynski had been doing this from 1978 to 1995, and they found him basically because of this manifesto that he had done, and they noticed his brother-in-law noticed some ways that he was writing. Phrases that he would use or that he'd noted that were very familiar to Ted Kaczynski, and that started the ball rolling and them tracking him down. And I am not going to get into Ted Kaczynski and what he did as the Unabomber, other than to say it is reprehensible, disgusting, obnoxious. I can't even wrap my head around it. It is so heinous how he chose to act out on this. And I have to be very, very clear about that, because I don't want YouTube to say, oh, all of a sudden I'm a sympathizer or something looks like that. No, hardly by any stretch of the imagination. I am not. However, what started this? And they talked about the manifesto. And I realized it's like, I had never read the manifesto. I want to see what is pissing this guy off. So I got curious, and you can find it anywhere. It was in the Washington Post. It was in the New York Times. I mean, there's a bajillion websites that has it out there. And it was called Industrial Society and Its Future. And it was published in 1995. But it started being written a lot earlier, because it's written like a doctoral thesis. And talking about the consequences of the advancement of technology. So now go back to 1995 or in 2026. Just in 1995, if he had not started writing this earlier, to where we are today and what's happened in the last 31 years, and you look at this and you read this, you go, holy shit, did he nail this? And talking about the impact of technology on society and the way that society has become fractioned. And it is pretty interesting. And I'm just going to go through a couple of segments, and I want you to decide. I'm not passing any judgment on this. I am not making any editorial comments throughout the course of this, other than to say, he does get very, he does get incredibly political, separating things down the left and the right, and I'm going to avoid that, because I want people to focus on the content. Now, let me tell you about this. How I used this one time, and I don't use it very often, but I did use it in one of my classes. And what I wanted to do was to kind of wake people up a little bit and to show them that you have to digest facts as facts, if you will, and then draw your own conclusions. The messenger doesn't, necessarily discredit the facts. So I had them read a redacted version of this where I took out a lot of the political divisiveness. And I had them read a redacted version. And we had a discussion in class about it. And it was a very spirited and robust discussion, and found that a lot of what was being said in this, the students went, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. And found themselves agreeing with many of the points that were being made in this killer's manifesto. To which we get down to the end of the class, and I said, does anyone know who wrote this? One person goes, I do. I go, how do you know? Oh, well, I put it into Google Lens. And okay, fine, you cheated. Okay. So I said, you can't answer this. I said, so nobody else knows who this is. And I go, well, I'm going to tell you who it is. And then I put up the shot of the Unabomber's police sketch. And they were like, oh my God. And I said, see, you have to interpret facts as facts. You have to, or knowledge or comments. I shouldn't say these are facts, but you have to digest things, in its simplest form. And then you add the messenger to it, and then you can come up with your answer. Just because you don't like the guy or the guy is bad who says it doesn't automatically make it false. So in looking at this, it's called Industrial Society and Its Future. And what he gets into is how technology and technology's advancements have inflicted severe damage to the international natural world. It has caused divisiveness among people where it was designed to immediately draw us together. It has subsequently pushed us apart. And they said that, and he said, as it continues, it's going to subject human beings to greater damage and greater social disruption and psychological suffering, even in advanced countries. So you look at that and you go, what does everyone complain about today, right? What happened to society? What's going on? How did this happen? Why do we all hate each other? Why is everything so divided? Well, he might have been onto something 40 years ago. He might have been onto something. I'm not saying he is. He might have been onto something. So he goes on to say, and I'm just going to read excerpts here and there. And like I said, the only editorial comment I'm going to have is, And I'll let you decide whether or not you think this has happened. But I find it to be real. Again, as I've mentioned. It says, almost everyone will agree we live in a deeply troubled society. One of the most widespread manifestations of the craziness of our world is political correctness. Now, he did not use the word political correctness. He used a different phrase that is probably more divisive. But in effect, it's political correctness. So, and the word police, if you will. So that's how I'm going to refer to it. We speak of politically correct people in this article as we have in mind as mainly like feminists, disability activists, animal rights activists, and the like. And that's not to imply that you shouldn't have activism, not by any stretch of the imagination. This is what he's drawing it for. It says the two psychological tendencies that underlie the modern politically correct individual are feelings of inferiority and over-socialization. Feelings of inferiority are a characteristic of the politically correct person as a whole. Over-socialization is a characteristic of only a certain segment of the politically correct, but it's highly influential. Now, by feelings of inferiority, we mean not only inferiority feelings in the strictest sense, but a whole spectrum of related traits. Now, think about this, what he says. And think if you know anybody like that. Low self-esteem, feelings of powerlessness, depressive tendencies, defeatism, guilt, self-hatred. When somebody interprets as derogatory almost anything that is said about them or groups with whom they identify, we conclude they have inferiority feelings or so low self-esteem. It's pronounced among minority rights activists, whether or not they belong to the minority groups whose rights they defend. They're hypersensitive about the words used to designate minorities and anything that is said concerning them. For example, the terms handicapped or chick originally had no derogatory connotation. Broad and chick were merely the feminine equivalents of guy or dude. The negative connotations have been added to those by the activists. Animal rights activists have gone so far as to reject the word pet and insist on replacement by animal companion. Politically correct people who are anthropologists go to great lengths to avoid saying anything about primitive people that could be interpreted as negative, and they don't say primitive, they say non-literate. Well, what's the difference? So it's calling someone not advanced or stupid. Which one is it? You know, because either one is not that good. And they get paranoid about anything that might suggest the primitive culture is inferior. Well, you don't want to know something? It is. As a human, they're not inferior, but as a culture, as a society, they certainly are. If they don't have advanced technologies, if they're that's primitive. That doesn't mean that they're people without dignity, but it's primitive. But then goes on to say political correctness. Okay, those who are most sensitive are not the average low-income immigrant, abused female, disabled person, but a minority of activists who don't even belong to an oppressed group, but come from a privileged level of society. Political correctness has its stronghold in university professors who have secure employment with middle-class salaries, and the majority of whom are heterosexual whites from middle to upper-class, upper-class families. Huh. They have an intense identification with the problems of groups that have an image of being weak, such as women, defeated, such as Native Americans, or repelled against, such as gay people, or the otherwise inferior, because they feel that they're inferior themselves. They would never admit it. They hate anything that has the image of being strong, good, and successful. This would be the politically correct. They hate America. They hate Western civilization. They hate white males. They hate rational thinking. They say they hate the West because it is warlike, imperialistic, sexist, ethnocentric, and on and on. But when the same faults appear in socialist countries or primitive cultures, they will find excuses for them. Interesting. I don't know. Do you see any of this happening? The politically correct person is anti-individualistic, pro-collectivism. He wants, or she, and you can see that this is the pronoun thing getting beaten into you. Oh, I can't say he. I should say they. Whatever. It was written back then when you could say he or she. So this is written in the masculine form, and it's a document. It's a, you know what? It's a, you know what? Screw this, because it is a historical document. I'm just going to read it as it is with the pronouns, and screw everybody else. He wants to solve everyone's problems for them, satisfy their needs for them, and take care of them. But he's not the type of person who has the confidence to solve his own problems. They are antagonistic to the concept of competition because deep inside he feels like a loser. They tend to dismiss reason, science, and objective reality to insist that everything is culturally relevant or culturally relevant. Dismiss reason, science, and reality to say everything is culturally relevant. Huh. They attack concepts. They attack people who attack their truth and reality because of their own psychological needs. And their attack is an outlet for their hostility. Their feelings of inferiority run so deep that he cannot tolerate any classification of some things as successful or superior. They are antagonistic to genetic explanations of human abilities or behaviors. Think about that. They are antagonistic to genetic explanations of human abilities or behavior because such explanations tend to make somebody appear superior or inferior to others. So they give society the credit or blame for an individual's ability or lack therefore. So a person is inferior. It's not his fault, but it's society's, because he has not been brought up properly. He has a deficit in his sense of power and self-worth, but can still conceive of himself as having the capacity to be strong. Politically correct people protest. I love this. This is this is 40 years ago. They protest by lying down in front of vehicles. They intentionally provoke police or racists to abuse them. These tactics may often be effective, but many use them as a means, not as a means to an end, because they prefer the tactics and the masochism of it. They claim their activism is motivated by compassion or moral principles, and while it does play a role, it is not their main motive. Hostility is too prominent a component of their behavior and the drive for power as well. So their behavior is not rational or rationally calculated to be of benefit to the people whom they claim to be trying to help. So basically what they're saying is these people are going nuts out there and it's not helping anyone. All of it is for naught. It doesn't help anyone. Race problems then serve as an excuse for them to express their own hostility and need for more power. And they do more harm because the activist hostile attitude toward the white majority tends to intensify racial hatred. And if society had no problems at all, they would have to invent problems in order to provide themselves with an excuse for making a fuss. Wow. And again, I'm not making any comments. You make your own, you decide on your own how this works for you. I'm just going, And this is unbelievable. Now he gets into this concept of over-socialization. He says the person is said to be well socialized if he believes and obeys the moral code of his society and fits in well as a functioning part. However, the moral code is so demanding that no one can think, feel, and act in a completely moral way. We're not. We're imperfect, right? We're imperfect being. We're imperfect humans. We are not perfect. We're not supposed to hate anyone, yet almost everybody hates someone at some time or another, including their opposition. We're not supposed to hate anybody, but you know what? We hate you. That's all you have to do is look at someone who's got an inclusion. And I've talked about this. People in my neighborhood that have inclusion signs on their lawn, and they have, MAGA hate bumper stickers on their car. They attempt to avoid feelings of guilt. They have to deceive themselves about their own motives and find moral explanations for feelings and actions that in reality have a non-moral origin. They justify their actions in morality, but their actions aren't moral. Interesting. Well, this over-socialization that he talks about can lead to low self-esteem, a sense of powerlessness, defeatism, guilt, and one of the best, most important means by which our society, think about this, socializes children is by making them feel ashamed of behavior or speech that is contrary to their expectations. If this is done, or if a particular child is susceptible to such feelings, he ends by feeling ashamed of himself. And I've seen that happen. I got one time a blog from a student at Marquette, male, who went on and on about how he felt guilty about being a cisgender upper middle class suburban kid. And he wrote this in a blog, and my response to him was, then why are you going to school at Marquette if you feel so bad? And that kind of gets, so it makes people are making him feel the shame. You have no reason to feel ashamed for yourself by who you are. Everyone is created in God's image, every one of us. So there's a little bit of God in everyone, and there's a little bit of everyone in God. So there's no reason for you to feel ashamed, because in a way, if you are ashamed of yourself, you're ashamed of God. Follow that logic. There you go. But the politically correct, the over-socialized type, love this, tend to be intellectuals or members of the upper middle class. Notice that university intellectuals constitute the most highly socialized segment of our society and the most politically correct segment. It's just, you just look at this and you go, dude, man, if you'd only chosen the right way to go about bringing this to people's attention, because no one's going to read this much in a newspaper. If you'd chosen the right paths, maybe some of these problems could have been changed. But no, you were a freaking idiot and you had to go blow shit up. What is wrong with you? Some political correct people have gone so far as to rebel against modern society's most important principles by engaging in, wait for it, physical violence. By their own account, violence is for them a form of liberation. In other words, by committing the violence, they break through the psychological restraints that have been trained into them. Because they're over-socialized, the restraints have been more confining, and hence their need to break free. So they justify the rebellion in terms of mainstream values. If they engage in violence, they claim to be fighting against racism or some other type of societal dominance. Interesting, right? then they get into the, so he goes, and this is really long. It's like 60 pages. These are only a few excerpts. These are the ones that made me go, huh. But I'll let you, like I said, I'll let you decide. Feel free. And I want you to hit the comments below and tell me what you think. And and share this too. I don't care. Like I said, I am not by any stretch of the imagination advocating anything that the Unabomber did. I'm simply reading a historical document and going, huh, you guys come up with it on your own. We attribute the social and psychological problems of society to the fact that we're required to live under conditions radically different from those which the human race evolved, and believe in ways that conflict with the patterns of behavior. Among the abnormal conditions present are the excessive density of population. Yeah, we're on top of each other. The isolation of man from nature. How many times have you heard somebody say, get outside and touch grass? Right? The rapidness of social change. I mean, it's like someone shoving a fire hose down your throat. And the breakdown of small-scale communities, such as the extended family, the village, or the tribe. Huh. It is well known that crowding increases stress and aggression. The degree of crowding that exists and the isolation of man from nature are consequences of technology. Think about that. What's he saying? What is he saying there? Unbelievable. For primitive societies, remember, for the non-literate, which usually change slowly, the natural world that they believed in was a stable framework and gave them a sense of security. In the modern world, society dominates nature rather than nature dominating society. And since society changes, the foundation of people is not stable. Makes all the sense in the world. The breakdown of traditional values implies the breakdown of the bonds that hold together traditional small-scale social groups. A technological society has to weaken family ties and local communities to function efficiently. In a modern society, an individual's loyalty must first be to the system and only secondarily to a small-scale community. Because if internal loyalties of small-scale communities were stronger than the system, such communities would pursue their own advantage at the expense of the system. Now, I'm going to do this. This is the only time I'm going to editorialize because I felt this passage to be incredibly compelling. I'm going to change 2 words here. And you tell me what you think. I'm going to change the word society to government. And community to family. And I'm going to reread it. The technological government has to weaken family ties and local communities if it is to function efficiently. In modern government, in modern society, an individual's loyalty must first be to the government and secondarily to the family. Because if the internal loyalties of family were stronger than the loyalty to the government, such communities would pursue their own advantage at the expense of the government. Think about that. That's technology. Like I said, just listen. You make your own decisions. Today, people live, I just love this, man. Today, people live more by virtue of what the system does for them or to them than by the virtue of what they do for themselves. Huh. And what they do for themselves is done more and more along channels laid down by the system. Opportunities. Okay, now let's change that to government. What they do for themselves. Okay, today people live more by the virtue of what the government does for them or to them by the virtue of what they do for themselves. And what they do for themselves is done more and more along channels laid down by the government. Opportunities tend to be those that the government provides. The opportunities must be exploited in accord with the rules and regulations, and techniques prescribed by experts must be followed if there is to be a chance of success. Think about that. Just go, huh. Our lives depend on decisions made by other people whom we have no control over, or the decisions, and we don't even know who makes them. Huh. And then they talk about science, and just do a quick, brief hit on this. And then I'm going to have you guys, and then you just go about your merry way. You decide for yourself. But this is some effed up stuff, right? Some scientists claim they're motivated by curiosity or a desire to benefit humanity. We're going to move humanity forward, right? But neither of these could be the motive of scientists. Curiosity, the notion is absurd. I'm not buying this, but they are curious about their own field of study. But the benefit of humanity doesn't work because some scientific work has no conceivable relation to the welfare of the human race. But other areas of science present obviously dangerous possibilities. So when he was saying they don't have a relation, it's like talking about archaeology or linguistics or whatever. It doesn't move forward. It's looking in the past. But obviously, some other areas, obviously dangerous possibilities. Consider the case of Dr. Edward Teller. And this is one, and these are the questions that I love. I love these questions to make people think. He had an obviously emotional involvement in promoting nuclear power plants, right? Big into nuclear energy. So, did this involvement stem from a desire to benefit humanity? If so, then why did he get emotional about other humanitarian causes? And if he was such a humanitarian, why did he help develop the hydrogen bomb? All logic. So you guys, you can decide on what you want to believe and what you don't want to believe. Okay? None of my decision. I know what I believe. That whole last segment here is just me going, huh. Take a look at what's happening around you. And then you can ask yourself, like, yeah, this guy was a crackpot. You should never see the light of day again. But damn, he nailed it. He nailed it on a lot of these things. Now, you can call me nuts. You can call me whatever. All I'm doing is reading what he wrote and observing things that are happening. And I would think with many of these things, you could argue the points. But if you don't see the writing on the wall with many of them, then you're in denial. So you tell me. You tell me what you think. Put it in the comments below, because I'm certainly not going to become a disciple of, Ted Kaczynski by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, lock him up, throw away the key. You should never see the light of day again, ever. But separate from, the message from the messenger and the way the message was delivered, and you kind of have to go, that was written by anyone else. I wonder if it would get any credence. I don't know, but it's pretty amazing. And I'm surprised I've never heard anyone talking about that. Probably because they don't want to give him any credit. I'm not giving him any credit at all. But it's a pretty good insight into the way society has turned out 40 years later. But you think whatever you want. But it's a little bit too compelling of an argument. So we're going to end the show today. Once again, back tomorrow on Thursday, April 2nd, with a fun show. It's always a fun show. I want to thank everybody for sticking around. I feel like I'm a little handcuffed in the sense that I can't talk about a lot of things that I want to talk about, but it's been a great learning experience for me. And I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And when the handcuffs finally come off, hopefully we can stretch our legs a little bit more and have a little bit more fun. Share this episode with people if you want to have an interesting discussion. If you go to YouTube, just If you find a segment that you like, go to YouTube, and when you go to share, start it at that point. So when people don't have to go through everything else in the episode to get to what you want to share with them, but pass it around, because personally, I've never heard anyone approach the current problems with society from this angle before, and I happen to think it's interesting. As I said, by no means am I condoning anything that Ted Kaczynski did, and I know I'm being overly demonstrative in saying that, but I feel it needs to be said, because if anyone comes back at me, which someone probably will, then I can say, no, you idiot. I said it 9 times beforehand. I can't make it any fucking clearer. But people will still attack no matter what, because that's the way that people are now. And that's what we've got to stop. Just remember, and I think this is incredibly important, God made everyone in his own image. And that means that God is in every one of us, and every one of us, there's a little bit of every one of us in God. So the person who, has got the bull ring in their nose and the purple hair, you know what? There's a little bit of bull ring and purple hair in God. There is, for the person who, the 600-pounder with Dr. Now. Okay. There's a little bit of that person in God. All of those things. Like for the guy, in like Malaysia, who has the weird disease where he's got hair all over his face. There's a little bit of that guy in God. So, just look out for everybody. That's all I'm saying. Look out for everybody, but understand that you can't rely on people to solve the problems for you. It's got to start with your own. Change your own world, and never worry about changing the rest of it. Maybe that's I think that's my new t-shirt. Change your own world before you're worried about changing the rest of it. And by all means, don't try to change mine. I think that is a fantastic t-shirt, right? Change your own world. Take care of yourself. And with that, I'm going to leave you today with Kenneth's quote of the day.
It's Kenneth's quote, it's Kenneth's quote, it's Kenneth's quote of the day.
And Kenneth's quote of the day is quite simple. Life is too short to hold grudges. Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you very much. And he's absolutely right. So once again, thanks for stopping by the show. Thanks for taking a look. Like I said, if you found anything interesting, share it with people. Try and get other people to subscribe. Hey, one person quit. I must have said something bad. But anyway, hop on this bandwagon and participate. Share it. Butchie is kicking my ass in terms of subscribers, but he can talk sports, and right in the middle of the tournament. So I'm kind of swimming upstream a little bit, but it's not a competition. But if you want me to keep this thing going, and many of you probably know, pass it around, share it. I'm having fun doing it. Hopefully you guys are having fun watching it. And with that, I will talk to you again tomorrow. And as always, make good choices. And that's it for this episode of KB's Unemployed Show. If you want to follow me on my unemployed journey, just subscribe to my channel below or dive into one of the playlists.